Not everybody knows I'm a military veteran myself. I enlisted in the United States Navy when I was 17 years old out of my hometown of El Monte, California, in the San Gabriel Valley, Los Angeles County. Like a friend of mine who took off all his clothes and jumped some cactus sit afterwards. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I wrote the song in 1965, and we recorded it on a little 7-inch extended play, 33 1/3 album, in Chris Rockwitz's living room, a guy who owns our Hurley Records, and we named the group Country Joe and the Fish. And then we got, when Dylan went electric, we went electric, and we got signed to Vanguard Records in New York City, and they didn't want to put Fixing to Die Rag on the first album, but they put it on the second album. They called the album, actually, I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die. And when we were recording it, I used to be the president of the band in El Monte, where I was in the band, and we used to spell out the Arroyo Nights and give a cheer for the Nights, so I decided we would give a cheer for ourselves when we recorded the album, and we spelled out fish. Give me an F, me, and then we all overdubbed Screaming Fish, and then we sang Fixing to Die Rag, and that's the way the album came out. And Fish, cheer, and fixing. It didn't make much sense, but it was the '60s and nobody cared. But we started doing the Fish cheer when we would perform, and people seemed to like it. But then we were playing in Central Park in New York City for the Schaefer Beer Festival, Schaefer Beer Company, and Chickenhurst, the drummer, got the great idea that night to change the Fish cheer to the fuck cheer. He said it's a 4-letter word beginning with F. And so why don't we do it? And we said, well, yeah, because a year before that he had got the idea of the smoking banana peels, and that worked out really great. So we knew that he had really great ideas, and so we did the fuck cheer that night for the first time, and the audience really loved it. We were in the dressing room afterwards congratulating ourselves on our new idea, and the Schaefer Beer representative stuck his head in the dressing room and said, "You're banned from the Schaefer Beer Festival for the rest of your life. You can never be on it." And we said, "Oh fuck 'em, it's lousy beer anyway." But the Ed Sullivan Show had hired us to be on the show. They were a TV show out of New York. You probably know that anyway. And they had paid us in advance, and they came to check out the act that they had hired that night. And this Ed Sullivan rep stuck his head and he said, "Forget it. You can keep the money, but you're never going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show." That did bum us out. And sometimes on TV shows, on Hollywood Squares, they'll ask you on TV shows and television who was paid to stay off the Ed Sullivan Show, and the answer is Country Joe and the Fish. So we kept on doing the cheer. Everybody kept on liking it. We got to Worcester, Massachusetts, and we did the fuck cheer there, and nothing strange happened. But that week, Jim Morrison had done something in Florida. I don't know, exposed himself or something. They were all really nervous. The cops that were there talked about it for a while, and then they called the Boston police and told the Boston police about it. And when we got to the Boston Gardens, we were met by 100 uniformed police officers with guns, clubs, and mace, 3 squad cars, and a police captain. And I was in the dressing room, and I heard somebody came in and said, "There's a police captain out here looking for a guy named McDonald." So I flushed my stash down the toilet, and I went out to see him. He was like a really tall, about 7 foot tall, blonde-haired, green-eyed Irish police captain. There was a requirement back then to make captain in Boston. He looked down at me and he said, the Worcester police called us and told us about the show last night. I said, "That's great." He said, "No, don't say it here." I said, "What's it?" He said, "You know what I mean." I said, "No, I don't know what you mean." He said, "Yes, you do know what I mean." I said, "No, I don't know what you mean." He said, "Yes, you do know what I mean." He started to turn red and shake all over. And the sergeant pulled me over in a corner and he said, "Come on, be a little cooperative." I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, just don't say it here." I said, "What's it?" He said, "You know what I mean." I said, "No, I don't know what you mean." Well, I knew what they meant, but I wanted to hear him say it. But there was a law in Boston that cops couldn't say "fuck" on duty at that time. That's completely changed now. And so he took me back, the sergeant took me back to the captain. The captain said, "If you say it, we're going to beat you up or we're going to take you to jail." I said, "Oh, I know what you mean." So I went back and we had one of those terrible things that bands have, band meetings, and we discussed this situation. We decided we didn't want to get beat up and taken to jail, so we would do the love cheer that night. So we got up on stage, and there was about 100 police officers with guns, clubs, and mace standing parade rest, facing the audience. The captain pacing back and forth, nervously staring at me the whole show. And behind Chicken's drums was like 25 guys with trench coats and crew cuts and sunglasses. They weren't our roadies. And we could see the door open. There was paddy wagons right outside the stage door, ready to take us. So we spilled out love that night. It thoroughly confused the audience. But after the show was over, the captain put his arm around me. He said, "You can come back anytime you want." I said, "Oh, fuck you." So we all went back home to Berkeley, and the band broke up. Every time the band went on the road, the band came home and it broke up. And so I was a solo act again, and 3 months later I got a job in Massachusetts. And my lawyer said, "No, you can't play in Massachusetts." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because there's a warrant for your arrest in Worcester, Massachusetts for leading the crowd in a lewd, lascivious, and wanton cheer." I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't make any difference. I was going to be tried anyway. I got a Massachusetts lawyer, and I flew into Worcester, Massachusetts. I was met on the day of my trial. I was met at the airport by Phyllis Hoffman, because the Hoffman family, Abby Hoffman's sister Phyllis, met me at the airport. The Hoffman family had a medical supply house in Worcester, which might explain Abby's behavior a little bit. I don't know. Phyllis and I go into the courthouse, and we find the room where my trial is going to be. We're trying to get in, but the sergeant of arms stops Phyllis at the door. He says, "I'm sorry, women are not allowed in the Worcester court with slacks on." So she said, "Oh, that's cool." She went into the toilet, took off her pants, and wrapped her coat around her waist. And she came back, and he said, "Okay, come on in." And so the trial started. The prosecuting attorney put two women from a New York State college who'd been to the concert that terrible night, and he put them on the stand, asked if they were offended by the cheer. They said no, they weren't. And so he didn't know what to do. There was nobody else left in the courtroom. The stenographer, the judge, me. He decided to put me on the stand to prove I was offended by the cheer. Kind of a gutsy tack to take, you know. I didn't think it would work. He said, "Mr. McDonald," I said, "you have a daughter, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Try to imagine she's standing on that street corner, you saying, you know what?" And I said, "Well, who started it?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." He said, "Okay, forget about that. Imagine you sit down to dinner one night and your daughter says, 'Pass the fucking salt.' What do you think about that?" I said, "Well, she's only 2 years old. It'd be her first coherent sentence. I'd be proud of her." Well, the judge didn't find that profound or funny at all. He was 87 years old. It was the last trial he presided over. He looked over at me and he said, "I don't get it. What's the connection between this obscene chant thing and a song about the war in Vietnam?" And he said, and I told him, I said, "Upon finding out you're going to Vietnam, you sure would say, 'Oh, fuck.'" And he didn't find that profound at all. And he fined me $50, and we appealed the case. It later got thrown out of court. And the whole thing cost me about $3,000, but judging by the inflated cost of gasoline and weed, it would probably be about $15,000 by today's standards. But anyway, I got the story out of it, and I guess that's something. Yeah. So,